how to put your wife first and treat her well, according to the Bible. My blessings come from the grace of God. Everything I have, every victory, and every moment of joy flows from His unending love. Please follow me so I can share them with you and inspire you to experience the same abundance in your life. Drop an amen if you have God in your heart and believe in His powerful grace that transforms, restores, and uplifts us daily. Men, let me ask you something. When was the last time you truly, intentionally put your wife first? I'm not talking about the time you brought home flowers after forgetting your anniversary, or that one date night you squeezed in between work and watching the game. I mean, really put her first, the way God calls us to. Because here's the truth. If you're married, your wife isn't just another part of your life. She's the most important earthly relationship you'll ever have. More than your career, more than your hobbies, even more than your role as a father if you have kids. And yet, if we're being honest, how often do we fail at this? How often do we let distractions, stress, or just plain selfishness get in the way of loving our wives the way Christ loves the church? If you're feeling convicted right now, good, because that means you're ready to change. You're ready to step into the role God has called you to. You're ready to become the husband He designed you to be. And I promise you, by the end of this video, you won't just know how to treat your wife better. You'll be equipped with biblical, practical, and powerful ways to love her in a way that transforms your marriage. Let's get real for a second. The world is filled with broken marriages. Infidelity, neglect, resentment, distance, it's everywhere. Some marriages don't end in divorce, but they live in a quiet state of suffering. Husbands and wives become roommates instead of soulmates. The spark dies, the connection fades, and two people who once promised to love each other forever end up living separate lives under the same roof. And do you know why? Because somewhere along the way, they stopped choosing each other. God didn't design marriage to be a burden. He didn't call you to be a husband just to have someone to split the bills with. Marriage is meant to be a reflection of Christ's love for the church. A love so deep, so sacrificial, so unwavering that He gave His very life for it. That's the love you're called to. That's the standard. But I know what you're thinking. That sounds impossible. I'm not Jesus. I have flaws. I get tired. I get frustrated. What if my wife doesn't appreciate my efforts? What if she doesn't treat me the same way? Listen to me, brother. This is not about conditions. This is about obedience. Loving your wife isn't based on how she treats you. It's based on how Christ commanded you to treat her. And when you start walking in that kind of love, when you start leading your marriage with selflessness, grace, and biblical wisdom, something incredible happens. Your wife flourishes. Your home becomes a place of peace. And you, as a husband, step into a level of fulfillment that no job, no paycheck, and no worldly success can ever give you. So let me ask you again, are you ready? Are you ready to build a marriage that reflects God's love? Are you ready to step up as a leader, protector, and servant? Because this is not about following trends. This is not about doing the bare minimum so your wife won't complain. This is about living out your calling as a godly man. By the end of this, you'll have the tools to not only strengthen your marriage, but to transform it into something truly beautiful. But it starts with you making the decision. Right now. Let's dive in. Chapter 1. God's design for marriage. Before we talk about how to put your wife first, we need to go back to the beginning. We need to understand why marriage exists in the first place. Because if we don't get God's design right, we'll build our marriage on the wrong foundation. When God created Adam, He looked at him and said something powerful. It is not good for man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him. Genesis 2 verse 18. Think about that. Everything else in creation was good. The sky, the seas, the animals, the trees. All of it was perfectly crafted by God. But the first time God said something was not good was when He saw that man was alone. So He created woman, not as an afterthought, not as an optional companion, but as an essential part of God's plan for humanity. And when Adam saw Eve, His reaction was one of pure joy. This is now bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. Genesis 2, verse 23. Right from the start, God designed marriage to be a partnership, a relationship built on love, unity, and purpose. A man and a woman coming together as one, reflecting the very nature of God's love. Now, here's where many men get it wrong. They think marriage is about control or dominance, but the Bible teaches something completely different. Ephesians 5, verse 25 says, "Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her." Let that sink in. You are called to love your wife the way Christ loves the church. And how did Christ love the church? He sacrificed himself. He served. He forgave. He pursued. He never abandoned. He never stopped loving, even when the church was unfaithful. That's the level of love God calls husbands to. It's not about power. It's about serving. It's about putting her needs before your own. It's about laying down your pride, your selfish desires, and your ego to build a marriage that glorifies God. So, let me ask you, are you treating your wife as the gift that God intended her to be? Or have you taken her for granted? If you're serious about putting your wife first, it starts here. Understanding that marriage is God's design, and your role is to love, protect, and cherish her as Christ does the church. Chapter 2. Loving your wife like Christ loves. The church, if there's one thing I want you to take from this, it's this: love is not a feeling. Love is a choice. Love is an action. The world tells us that love is about emotions, about butterflies in your stomach, about passion and romance. And while those things are great, they are not what sustains a marriage. Real love, the kind of love that transforms marriages, is sacrificial love. Jesus didn't just say he loved the church. He proved it. He humbled himself. He washed the feet of his disciples. He endured humiliation, pain, and death for us. And that is the model of love that God has given to husbands. Philippians 2, verses 3 to 4 says, "Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of the others." Now, apply that to your marriage. What if, instead of expecting your wife to serve you, you served her? What if, instead of focusing on what she's doing wrong, you focus on how you could love her better? Sacrificial love looks like helping around the house even when you're tired, listening when she's had a hard day, even when you have your own stress, being patient when she's frustrated, encouraging her dreams and supporting her goals, loving her unconditionally, not just when she's meeting your expectations. This isn't weakness. This is biblical leadership. Jesus was the greatest leader, and he led by serving. Men, ask yourself, are you showing your wife Christ-like love every single day? If not, today is the day to start. Chapter 3. The power of words. Let me ask you, how do you talk to your wife? Do you speak life into her, or do your words tear her down? The Bible says in Proverbs 18, verse 21, "The tongue has the power of life and death." That means every word you speak to your wife is either building her up or breaking her down. There's no middle ground. Think about the last week. Have you encouraged her? Told her she's beautiful? Thanked her for all she does? Prayed over her? Or have you criticized her? Ignored her? Been impatient or dismissive? Many husbands don't realize how deeply their words impact their wives. Women crave emotional connection. They need to hear that they are loved, valued, and appreciated. When you withhold that, you create distance and resentment in your marriage. Ephesians 4, verse 29 says, "Do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up." Your wife should never doubt that she is loved. Your words should be a constant source of encouragement. Even when you're frustrated, even when things aren't perfect, you have the power to speak life into your marriage. So here's a challenge for you. For the next 7 days, make it a point to affirm your wife every single day. Tell her you love her. Appreciate her efforts. Compliment her. Watch what happens when you start speaking life into your marriage. Chapter 4. Being present in today's world. One of the biggest threats to marriage isn't infidelity. It's distraction. Men, let's be honest. How often are you physically home, but not really present? Your body is in the room, but your mind is on your phone, on work, on the game, on something else. Your wife doesn't just need you to be around. She needs your attention. She needs your presence. Jesus modeled this perfectly. Every time he spoke to someone, he was fully engaged. He wasn't distracted. He wasn't looking at his phone if they had them back then. He made people feel seen and heard. That's what your wife needs from you. Ecclesiastes 4 verses 9 to 10 says, "Two are better than one, because they have a good return for their labor. If either of them falls down, one can help the other up." But how can you help her up if you're never truly there? Here are some simple ways to be more present in your marriage. Put the phone down when you're with her. Make eye contact when she's talking. Ask her about her day, and actually listen. Set aside quality time every single day, even if it's just 15 minutes. Plan regular date nights. No kids, no work, just the two of you. Being present doesn't mean you have to spend hours together every day. It just means that when you are together, you're fully engaged. Men, your wife needs your time, your attention, and your heart. Don't let distractions steal your marriage. Chapter 5. Protecting your wife's heart. Men, let's talk about something serious. Emotional safety. Your wife should feel safe with you, not just physically, but emotionally. She should never have to wonder if you truly love her. She should never have to question whether you're faithful. She should never feel like she's competing for your attention. Proverbs 4 verse 23 says, "Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it." But here's the thing, you're not just responsible for guarding your own heart. You're responsible for guarding hers too. So, how do you protect your wife's heart? First, be faithful. And I don't just mean avoiding physical affairs. I mean guarding your eyes, your mind, and your emotions. In today's world, temptation is everywhere. Social media, TV, coworkers. It's easy to let your heart wander if you're not intentional. Jesus said in Matthew 5 verse 28, "Anyone who looks at a woman lustfully has already committed adultery with her in his heart." That means what you watch, what you think about, who you engage with, all of it matters. Your wife needs to know that she is the only woman in your life. Second, be her safe place. Does your wife feel like she can come to you with anything? Or does she feel like she has to hide her thoughts, her struggles, her emotions? Your job as a husband is to create a space where your wife feels cherished, understood, and protected. That means listening without judgment, being patient with her emotions, and making her feel valued no matter what. And finally, set boundaries. You can't have a strong marriage if you're letting outside influences damage your relationship. This could be toxic friendships, work relationships that get too personal, or even unhealthy family dynamics. Protecting your wife's heart means putting your marriage first. Your wife is a gift from God. Cherish her, protect her, and make sure she knows she is the most important person in your life. Chapter 6. Praying for and with your wife. Let me ask you a tough question. When was the last time you prayed for your wife? I don't mean a quick "God bless my wife" prayer. I mean truly lifting her up in prayer, interceding for her, covering her spiritually the way Christ covers the church. 1 Peter 3 verse 7 says, "Husbands, in the same way be considered as you live with your wives, and treat them with respect as the weaker partner, and as heirs with you of the gracious gift of life, so that nothing will hinder your prayers." Did you catch that? How you treat your wife affects your prayers. If you neglect your wife, if you treat her harshly, if you fail to love her the way God commands, your prayers can be hindered. Prayer is one of the most powerful things you can do for your marriage. So, how do you pray for your wife? Pray for her strength. Life is hard, and she carries burdens you may not even see. Pray for her dreams and goals. Ask God to bless the things she's working toward. Pray for her spiritual growth, that she would grow closer to God every day. Pray for your marriage, that God would keep you both united and strong. And most importantly, pray with her. A couple that prays together stays together. There is something deeply intimate about coming before God together, lifting each other up, and inviting His presence into your marriage. Start small. Maybe just a quick prayer before bed. But make it a habit, because when you cover your wife in prayer, you invite God to strengthen your marriage in ways you never imagined. Chapter 7. Leading your home with wisdom, husbands. You are called to be the spiritual leader of your home. That doesn't mean you're a dictator. It doesn't mean you make all the decisions without your wife's input. It means you set the tone for your family's faith. Proverbs 24 verses 3 to 4 says, "By wisdom a house is built, and through understanding it is established. Through knowledge its rooms are filled with rare and beautiful treasures." A godly husband leads with wisdom, love, and humility. So, how do you lead your home well? First, prioritize your own relationship with God. You can't lead your wife and family spiritually if your own faith is weak. Spend time in the Word. Pray. Grow in your faith. Second, set the example. Your wife and kids will follow your lead. If they see you seeking God, loving your wife well, treating people with kindness, that's what they will learn. But if they see hypocrisy, if they see you saying one thing and living another, they'll see through it. Third, make wise decisions. Your wife needs to trust that you're making choices that honor God and protect your family. That means handling finances responsibly, making ethical choices, and always considering what's best for your marriage and home. And finally, be humble. A good leader isn't someone who demands respect. A good leader is someone who earns it through love, sacrifice, and integrity. Lead your home the way Christ leads the church, with love, grace, and wisdom. Chapter 8. Loving through hard times. Every marriage will go through storms. Maybe you and your wife have had fights. Maybe there's been betrayal. Maybe you feel distant from each other. Maybe life's pressures, finances, parenting, stress have put a strain on your relationship. But let me remind you, love isn't about feelings. Love is about commitment. 1 Corinthians 13 verses 4 to 7 says, "Love is patient, love is kind. It does not envy, it does not boast, it is not proud. It does not dishonor others. It is not self-seeking. It is not easily angered. It keeps no record of wrongs. Love does not delight in evil, but rejoices with the truth. It always protects, always trusts, always hopes, always perseveres." Real love perseveres. So, what do you do when marriage gets hard? First, choose to love anyway. Love is not based on how you feel in the moment. It's based on a decision to honor your vows, to put your wife first, to keep fighting for your marriage even when it's tough. Second, forgive quickly. Holding on to bitterness will destroy your marriage. If Christ forgives us, we must forgive each other. Third, communicate openly. Many marriages fail not because of a huge betrayal, but because of small, unresolved issues that build up over time. Talk to your wife. Be honest. Work through things together. And finally, trust God. You're not in this marriage alone. God is with you. He is for your marriage. He can heal what's broken. He can restore what's lost. He can bring love back where it has faded. So, no matter what you're facing in your marriage right now, don't give up. Keep fighting. Keep loving. Keep trusting God. Because a marriage built on Christ will always stand the test of time. Chapter 9. Keeping the romance alive, let's be honest. One of the biggest mistakes husbands make is stopping the pursuit. Before marriage, you were intentional. You planned dates. You sent sweet messages. You made her feel special. But after a few years, life gets busy. Work, kids, stress, it all piles up, and suddenly, romance is put on the back burner. Men, let me tell you something important. Your wife still wants to feel pursued. Just because she's married to you doesn't mean she no longer needs to feel cherished, desired, and special. Look at Song of Solomon, an entire book of the Bible dedicated to the passionate love between a husband and wife. God designed marriage to be full of love, romance, and intimacy. So how do you keep the romance alive? First, be intentional. You don't have to be rich or spend a fortune to make your wife feel special. Small, thoughtful gestures mean the most. Write her a note. Surprise her with her favorite snack. Take her on a date, even if it's just coffee at home after the kids are asleep. Second, speak her love language. Does she love words of affirmation? Tell her she's beautiful. Does she love acts of service? Help her with something. Does she love quality time? Plan an evening just for the two of you. Third, never stop flirting. Compliment her. Send her a sweet text during the day. Hold her hand. Laugh together. A marriage filled with playfulness and joy is a marriage that stays strong. And finally, prioritize intimacy. God created physical intimacy as a gift for marriage. It's not just about passion, it's about connection. If your marriage has felt distant, it might be because you've stopped prioritizing intimacy. Make time for each other. Put effort into it. Keep the fire alive. Your wife deserves to feel loved, pursued, and cherished every single day. Conclusion: the legacy of a godly husbandman. Let's take a step back and look at the big picture. At the end of your life, what kind of husband do you want to be remembered as? Do you want your wife to look back and say, "My husband loved me the way Christ loves the church. He put me first. He protected me. He prayed for me. He was faithful, kind, and strong"? Or do you want her to say, "I felt ignored. I felt unappreciated. He was there, but not really there"? The choice is yours. Marriage is not just about being happy. It's about building something eternal. It's about showing the world what God's love looks like. Ephesians 5 verse 25 says, "Husbands, love your wives, just as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her." That is your calling. That is your mission. Putting your wife first isn't about weakness. It's about strength. It's about choosing to love, even when it's hard. It's about leading, serving, protecting, and honoring the woman God has given you. And here's the incredible thing. When you love your wife the way God commands, your marriage flourishes. Your home is filled with peace. Your wife feels secure. Your children grow up seeing what true, godly love looks like. And you, as a husband, experience the joy and fulfillment of living out your purpose. So, what's your next step? Don't just listen to this message. Act on it. Start serving your wife today. Start speaking life over her. Start praying for her, protecting her, and pursuing her the way God calls you to. And if you've made mistakes, it's not too late. God's grace is bigger than your failures. Start fresh today, because a man who loves his wife well is a man who honors God. So the question remains, will you step up? Will you be the husband God has called you to be? The choice is yours.